Google, still being 90% of the search marketplace, and dominating basically all commercialization still. It's still where you should be putting your time and your effort. Um, you need to future proof for AI for sure, but right now our customers just aren't quite there yet. But like you said, I mean, actual declines. There shouldn't be any actual declines. Maybe if their reporting system said that your rankings were down a little bit or something like that, that might actually be a false negative because they can no longer track it. But we've been hearing some people out there saying that everybody's had traffic declines since kind of September, October. That shouldn't be the case because the only actual big Google update that they did around that time was a spam update, which means that if somebody is doing SEO for you and they're using spammy SEO tactics, basically Google did an update that will actually then suppress those people's rankings. So they're basically punishing people. Well, it may be not even a suppression. It might be that you had better rankings and now they figured you out, right? So if you are actually seeing a decline since September, October, you might be with the wrong vendor that's using black hat tactics or something of the sort. So, definitely look at your data and look at what they're telling you. But, sometimes we see people that don't, specialize in digital, don't really pay enough attention to these updates and the data and correlating them correctly, and they end up, like you kind of said, wrongly indicating whether or not your rankings are increasing or decreasing or whatnot. It's important to actually know what the cause is, right? And updates can be a big cause for that.
Yeah, and the spam update is different than like a broad core algorithm update for it. It's not actually, there's no benefit. The only benefit that you can receive from that is if somebody above you actually was removed or they were devalued and now you're above them and getting their traffic for it. And when it's a spam and they're looking at that, I think that sometimes that can be confusing if you're not in this space, because what is spam? And a lot of spam is going to be blatant. And you mentioned black hat SEO tactics where people are, purposely trying to manipulate search engines, whether they're buying really bad spammy links, fake reviews, a lot of those tactics that haven't worked for a while, at least haven't worked well for a while. But it's also, I think there's also a lot of, impact from things that are coming across as spammy that might not seem spammy to you as a customer, right? Or your vendor, even for that matter, because they're using things like thin content and putting out things that just aren't providing any real value for it. So it's just looking spammy because you don't have anything that's really helping you, whether it's duplicate content that you're seeing or just content that's created in a way that isn't actually, something original for it or something more driven around answering the topic. So you're being penalized then more so now with that spam update because they're just recategorizing what they're thinking spam is and how they're seeing spam. So now if they're viewing you as spam, well, now you're going to see that traffic drop off. It's not as if there's this big core algorithm update that they're valuing other things higher. They're just devaluing things that really weren't that valuable in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on the flip side of that, that's probably why we're seeing almost everybody's getting increases in traffic right now, or in the last month or so, since those updates. Because, like you said, if somebody was outranking you because they were doing spammy tactics, now you're getting more hits, right? And that goes for any key phrase that you rank for on search. And granted, we have AI overviews, all that kind of stuff. But again, if somebody searches a keyword and AI overviews pops up at the top, what we're seeing is that local search is actually still benefiting from that, whereas national search is getting hit by it. So there are a lot of reasons why you could be losing traffic, but in this case, you should not be losing traffic due to the spam update. Instead, you should be seeing an increase right now, not just because of that update, but also from a seasonal perspective too. But yeah, I would definitely keep that in mind. When you're looking at your traffic and when you're seeing these reports, it's really important.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to know too that if you were impacted by the spam update from Google, it's not as if you can just make a couple changes and now you're going to gain your rankings back. Like if you were working with a vendor that, was doing these tactics that are now being identified as spam, it's not a quick fix. You obviously have to eliminate whatever the issues are, whether that's the content side of things or something more malicious for it. But now you have to wait for Google to essentially reassess you, right? Where they're going to see if it's no longer going to be considered more of that spammy site to get those rankings back, and that doesn't just happen because you made the changes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we hear in our space all the time EEAT, right, which is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. I mean, that trust is lost, right, if you're doing a bunch of spam, and that's whether or not Google has done something calling assigning you a manual penalty, which you can only see in Search Console, but they will just do it. They'll give you a ghost penalty, right, and you don't exactly know when that's going to be alleviated. Usually you have to wait for the next update. They don't do those live all the time. So it really kind of depends on how the update processes. But yeah, you could be stuck for months if you're with somebody doing black hat stuff, or even years potentially.